Hello, my name is Adrienna Agasi, and I would like to share with you about the influential educational thinker Burrhus Frederick Skinner, more commonly known as B.F. Skinner. Skinner was born on March 20th, 1904 in Pennsylvania and died on August 19th, 1990 in Massachusetts. He attended Hamilton College and received his B.A. in English Literature in 1926 and became a writer. When he was working at a bookstore, he saw books by Pavlov and Watson, which influenced his decision to go to graduate school at Harvard University, where he received his PhD in psychology in 1931. Skinner contributed to educational psychology in several ways. He continued the study of behaviorism after Watson, Pavlov, and Thorndike. Skinner believed that learning occurs through environmental interactions and that behavior is dependent upon the environment. Skinner added to Pavlov's research on classical conditioning. He believed that classical conditioning was limited and that understanding behavior must include consequence. He then coined the term operant conditioning, which is the use of rewards and punishments for behavior. After receiving either a reward or a punishment, the individual will make a connection between the behavior and the consequence. Another idea that Skinner added to educational psychology was the term reinforcement, which is essentially rewarding behavior. Reinforcement is used to strengthen behavior. On the other hand, punishment is used to weaken behavior. To demonstrate reinforcement and punishment, Skinner invented the Skinner box and the pigeon box. Skinner placed rats in a box. When the rats pressed a lever accidentally, they would receive food. After the rats received food several times, they began to press the lever as soon as they were placed in the box because they would receive a reward, or positive reinforcement. The box also contained electrical currents throughout the box, which was uncomfortable for the rats. When the rats hit a switch in the box, the electrical current would stop. The rats soon would go straight for the switch to stop the electrical current, which represents negative reinforcement. However, when the rats pressed the lever and stopped receiving food, they stopped pressing the lever altogether, causing the behavior of pressing the lever to become extinguished. The removal of a desired reward to decrease or weaken a behavior is considered punishment. In this case, the reward was food and the behavior was pressing the lever. The pigeon box was much the same. However, pigeons would peck on a key. The desired behavior caused pieces of grain to be dispensed, which acted as the reward or reinforcer. Skinner also made an impact on education. Skinner introduced scheduled reinforcement. Teachers today must decide which schedule is the most effective for the behavior they are trying to strengthen or weaken. Types of scheduled reinforcement include continuous reinforcement, fixed ratio reinforcement, fixed interval reinforcement, variable ratio reinforcement, and variable interval reinforcement. Continuous reinforcement is when the student receives a reinforcer every time they exhibit a desired behavior. Fixed ratio reinforcement occurs when the student receives a reinforcer after a certain number of times they exhibit a desired behavior. Fixed interval reinforcement happens when the student receives a reinforcer after a certain amount of time, as long as they have exhibited the desired behavior at least once. Variable ratio reinforcement occurs when the student receives a reinforcer after an unspecified number of times they exhibit a desired behavior. Variable interval reinforcement is when the student receives a reinforcer after an unspecified amount of time, if they have exhibited the desired behavior at least once. Skinner's development in behaviorism and operant conditioning led to the use of token economies in the school system, especially at the primary level and in special education. Token economies are a way to positively reinforce students. The idea is that students receive a token or other form of secondary reinforcer when they exhibit the targeted behavior. When the student receives a certain number of tokens, they will exchange the tokens for a reward or the primary reinforcer. Skinner also developed behavior modification, which is always reinforcing desired behavior and punishing undesired behavior. The use of behavior modification led to the development of behavior intervention plans. The idea of a behavior intervention plan is to identify the antecedent, behavior, and consequence, followed by the development of a goal, behavior, and reinforcement. Skinner is one of the greatest influencers on behaviorism in education, and he had an impact on applied behavior analysis, or ABA, which is an effective strategy for students with autism. ABA is a form of behavior therapy which uses reinforcement to strengthen desired behaviors and punishment to weaken and eventually extinguish undesired behaviors. Critics believe that Skinner put too much emphasis on conditioning. They say that people should not be able to decide how another person should be conditioned or how they should behave. Skinner's idea of conditioning has been likened to George Orwell's 1984, a dystopian novel concerned with totalitarianism and the loss of human individuality and freedom. I believe that something should be said about behavior modification. Behavior modification is when a desired behavior is always reinforced and an undesired behavior is always ignored or punished. The act of always reinforcing behavior seems like it may cause students to become dependent upon reinforcement or that teachers are using bribery to encourage desired behaviors. In a training that I went to for applied behavior analysis, I was instructed to never bribe students. Skinner's implication of behavior modification leaves a little room to differentiate between reinforcement and bribery. Although there are criticisms regarding Skinner's research on behaviorism, I believe that he is a champion in educational psychology and there is much to be learned from his influence. Thank you.